Hi everyone, James Egersdorff here previewing game week 2 of the Fantasy Premier League. So we're off and running for 2018-19. Game week 1, pretty high scoring game week, lots of defenders delivering. So Shaw, Alonso, Wan-Bissaka, who I had on the bench. I think pretty much everybody had that guy on the bench. Patrick Van Arnholt, Robertson, the list is endless. Loads of defenders doing really, really well. Of course, the big one being Mendy. Thought he was superb. So really unusual that so many defenders get so many high scoring game weeks, and on the flip side so many strikers did so badly, so all our usual suspects didn't really score. Same with all that sort of middle ranking, so lots of people having Josh King, Arnautovic. I had Deeney, bit of a curveball, left field move, but didn't pay off for anybody, so pretty unusual start to game week 1, but a high scoring one nonetheless. So on we go to game week 2, and I've pulled out a few talking points, a few things that I want to go through. So I think we'll start at the home of the champions. So Man City, pretty good performance against Arsenal. They didn't really have to get into top gear, I think that's fair to say. They didn't have David Silva, they didn't have De Bruyne for the most part of the game. And I've got a feeling that I think we might see some rotation there on Sunday. So I'm a little bit worried. I'm an Aguero owner, and I was interested in that Arsenal game in the where were they in the match? Were they 2-0 up, I think, at the time? And Aguero goes clean through on goal. He's got De Bruyne to his left to square it to him and put the ball in the net to basically wrap up the game. Arsenal were knocking a little bit. They were starting to create a couple of chances, and Aguero went himself, and of course Cech saved it. And I've got a feeling, we saw it last year, if you think back, that Guardiola went and put Aguero on the bench, if I remember, a couple of times, and went with Jesus, and something niggling away at me there that I don't know if Aguero's going to get the full game. Maybe he will start, but come off after about an hour. Maybe Jesus will start. And I'm not trying to scaremonger here. I'm not trying to put people off putting Aguero as captain. I'm just pointing out that there is a pretty good international calibre striker in the shape of Gabriel Jesus, who's not played the Community Shield. He played 5 minutes at the end. He played 5 minutes at the end against Arsenal. Is Huddersfield at home a good game to kickstart his season with? Maybe it is. So there's an element of risk there for Aguero. I think likewise with Sané, we've not seen much of him this season. Would Huddersfield at home be a good game for him? Likewise, David Silva, we've not seen much of him. I don't even know where he is. Mahrez, I was interested to see that he only played 50-something minutes and only came in with a point. I did think he played well in that game, though. There's definitely some challenges. I think we're going to have to accept, as FPL managers, rotation is becoming more and more of a headache every single season. So I think it's fine to have these guys from the top teams in your squads, but you've just got to have some coverage as subs. So that makes Wan-Bissaka a brilliant option because he's still only 4.1. He has gone up a little bit this week, but you do need to have some coverage on your bench and accept that rotation is very much part of the game. So on to Arsenal, who were obviously beaten by Man City. Bit of a work in progress there. This pass it out from the back thing looked a bit, they weren't quite used to that. I wonder if we'll see Leno in goals rather than Cech. The one thing that did interest me, two things actually. I thought Lacazette looked really good when he came on. I was surprised that he didn't start. And I wonder if that's just something to do with the system. I mean, Man City at home is a really tough opening game. I wonder if in future games, that maybe not Chelsea away so much, but in future games they may play slightly differently. But I did think it was interesting in that system. Ramsey in the first half and Ozil in the second half, when Ramsey went off, whoever played in that position behind the front man was often running ahead of the striker, and in many ways almost playing as the furthest player forward for them. That was quite interesting, so that's worth watching. Maybe that could create a real attacking role for one of the midfield players. I think people need to not get too excited with form. You know, who are the form teams? We've only had one game week, and I've got a feeling that the teams that were beaten quite heavily in game week 1, so West Ham got absolutely hammered at Anfield. I don't think we read too much into that, because personally I think that is the worst fixture you could hope for in game week 1, Liverpool at Anfield. I think it's actually worse. I would rather play Man City at home. And the reason for that is Liverpool, they're the ones with the point to prove this season. They're the ones that everybody's looking to challenge Man City. So don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Man City at home is a game that I'd like. That is the second hardest game. But I think it was like a foregone conclusion that Liverpool were going to come out and absolutely blow away pretty much anyone you put in front of them, with the exception of maybe Man City if they'd have played City at home. I think they'd have probably beaten everybody on that opening game week. So I don't think you can write West Ham off and look at that as a really bad result. I think they're on a hide into nothing a little bit. So I think they're going to bounce back against Bournemouth. I think Cardiff are going to bounce back against Newcastle. I think, again, not an easy fixture for them down at Bournemouth. Bournemouth are usually pretty good at home. I think full house, first game back in the Premier League. Newcastle don't score many goals. Cardiff don't let many in. It's a classic 1-0, this one. Perhaps going to be won off a set piece. I probably wouldn't recommend watching that match on Saturday lunchtime unless you want a real war of attrition. I think it's going to be a really tight game. But I think Cardiff have got a good chance of getting off and running in that game. Leicester, Wolves. Wolves, I think that Everton game for both teams was a game that neither team wanted. They've both spent lots of money. They've both recruited lots of players. And a draw, those teams have come away from that game going, phew, like the draw was the result that in a way seems fair for both of them. I think Wolves are going into that Leicester game. There's no expectation there on Wolves. And there was something that I noticed that if you look at when Jimenez scores, the reaction, that those fans and the players and the management, they celebrate like they've just won the league and they've just scored an equaliser. I think there's going to be a real like siege mentality or collectivity around that Wolves team. It's a bit like they're the team that nobody likes, or they're the team that if you're in the top 6 you don't like because they're ruffling a few feathers, they're spending a bit of money, they're buying some pretty top quality players, and I think they're going to turn up in every game and have a go, and they're going to think that they can have a go, and I like that mentality. That's great for FPL. I think you would ordinarily fancy Leicester at home. Of course you would. They're a good team, and against most teams you back Leicester. But I've got a feeling Wolves could get a result there at weekend. And the other team that I think, don't get me wrong here, I'm not saying that I think they're definitely going to get a result. I'm just saying it wouldn't surprise me if they do. I think Fulham on a Wembley pitch, and if anybody saw Fulham play last year, their style of football on that nice big Wembley pitch could really suit them. And I think they were a bit unlucky against Crystal Palace. They had a lot of chances. Hennessy played very well, and Mitrovic, I thought, played well. They could upset Tottenham. It's a wait and see, but it wouldn't surprise me if they maybe nick a draw there. Chelsea. We move on to Chelsea. So there's something really interesting here from an FPL perspective, and that is, can they get Hazard, Pedro and Willian in that team, all starting in that team? If they do, that opens up Hazard as a premium option, of course, Pedro and Willian as bargain options, and would create a really, Conte never really was able to get this. Willian was often the fall guy, which people thought was mad. But can he get all three of them players in that team? If he does, that's going to make them really exciting. So definitely worth keeping an eye on. It's definitely a wait and see, because the Arsenal game is a tricky one, and it's tricky because Arsenal are good anyway, and it's tricky because we don't know Arsenal's system and we don't really know Chelsea's system yet. I don't think we can judge them off the Huddersfield match and the Community Shield match. I think it's a bit more of a wait and see, but can they get Hazard, Pedro and Willian into the side? That would be amazing if they do that. And finally, we looked to captains this week. So I've given you my view on Aguero, and I always think there's an element of doubt. You probably can't run with it. I mean, it's really enticing, Huddersfield at home, and you think to yourself, that could be 5 or 6, that game. It really could. But Salah scored, never gets bonus. He scored against West Ham. Never seems to get any bonus, but he's just so consistent with his results. Yeah, Palace is a tough game for them. But the fact that he gets the benefit of an extra point for a goal, the fact that he gets the benefit of an extra point if he gets a clean sheet, it swings it just a bit for me. And the fact that, of course, he's guaranteed to play the whole match, and unless something crazy happens, like an injury, it's kind of swinging it for me. They're my views. Don't let it. If your heart's on Aguero and you think he's going to play, go for it. But unless you're 100% sure he's going to play, my advice is to remain cautious. And Salah is an absolutely brilliant option. Likewise, if you've got Kane, not many people do because of the price. But if you've got him, I think that's a good enough shot at home to Fulham. So I hope that's useful. If you'd like to hear more, as you may know, I'm doing an FPL Masterclass through Patreon. There's a video gone up this week which is talking a bit more depth about transfers and strategy for Game Week 2. So if that's your bag, there's a link. I'll put it in the box below and you can check that out. Otherwise, I'll see you next week for Game Week 3 preview. Enjoy Game Week 2. Cheers.